My guest today was a high-flying brand strategy executive until an underwear dilemma forced her to rethink her career. And she's now created a brand that is quite literally changing the world. Welcome, Gugu Nkabinde.
Thank you.
How are you?
I'm very good. Cold, but yeah, I'm good.
So let's talk about that. You're cold because we're actually tell everybody where we are and why you're here.
So we are in Brooklyn, New York, at the TNT Concept Store, where I have recently launched Gugu Intimates in store. It is a concept store that comprises of luxury African curated brands by Farai Samoy. And she approached me a couple of months ago after the launch of Gugu Intimates, saying that the brand would be a great addition to the store. And here we are.
Gugu Intimates, tell us about that.
So Gugu Intimates is Africa's first premium underwear range for women of color. So it is what you call nude underwear, but in more shades than have been in the market previously. So the range came about when I myself was wearing a white shirt in a meeting and overheating, literally, because I had layered to avoid my underwear bleeding through or showing. And being bothered enough, I guess, I started to ask myself, why in a continent with so many millions of women of color does nobody recognize our skin tones as nude? And fast forward to about January 2016, January 2016, I decided I was going to explore, find out what my options were, and see if maybe I could solve for that problem because I knew it wasn't just me.
Now that is mind-blowing that, as you said, in Africa, where the majority are people of color, there were no brands who were creating underwear for our skin tones?
There wasn't anything that I found. I eventually had gone online and bought another brand online that had cost me so much money. I couldn't imagine any South African woman paying that much for basics. And while, yes, skin-colored underwear will be a luxury because it is a nice to have in your repertoire, I just thought that women within Africa deserved more than just the product, but a brand that would say something new and different to them on something so personal to our identity.
So what was it in January 2016 that led you to think, this is what I'm going to do? And where do you even start? Did you have a background in design, in underwear? Or?
Ooh, girl, we could be here all day, but I'm going to start it from, I think the most significant moment of this journey was the 31st of December 2015, where, as most of us would probably be parting our way into a new year, that year I just kind of felt tired of that vibe, and I felt like being a little bit more conscious about my entry into the new year and being more deliberate. And the question had come from myself and a friend talking about how will next year this day be different, you know? And something so abstract just led to something so profound because it is all those questions you have at the end of the year about what you could have done better. Is this the best you can do? My questions were starting to center around what am I going to leave behind other than the great job, you know, and the work that is amazing that comes out of, for example, brand strategy. So the quest was to find my thing beginning January. And I remember it didn't take that long because on the 22nd of January 2016 was the first day I remember dating a slide going skin-colored undergarments exploration document. And there I was putting down who the competitors were, what did the landscape look like, what kind of brands were in the market. Somehow this topic of the brand is as important as the product became very apparent to me at the time.
Was that something that naturally, like where do you begin? Like as you said, so you started to put together a slide. Like where did you even start to think about the idea and to get help to take it to the next step?
So I kept it to myself and probably one or two other people for quite a while. I'd say for about 3 months, I said nothing, but to these people who knew that I was kind of coming home after work and, you know, spending some time on the interwebs and all of that, doing some research, just reading up, no kind of end goal in mind at the time, until it came to a point where I kind of could see this brand in the market, right? So that's my strength. And then I started to go, okay, cool, what would it take? I already knew kind of the variables. I would need to find somebody who could custom dye material that makes this underwear. That was the one thing I understood basic. I didn't have to be a designer. And I did a lot of thinking and research, but it came down to the point where I realized that I have to go and find the expertise to custom color this material, that I just took a leap of faith and I took a trip to Asia where there was an underwear and textile fair where there would be lingerie and underwear manufacturers in a giant hall in Hong Kong. So I was like, let's just go see. Let's just go see. And I came back with a short list of suppliers I could prototype with. And that's where it became a no turning back.
And so, first of all, that decision to, when you say no turning back, does that mean that's the point where you decided you were going to leave your job, or how did that process happen for you?
Pretty much. So yeah, it's one of those funny stories I don't think I've told on video before. I think it's been written about in small bits in articles, but I had just resigned from my job, right, to take on another another strategist role at another agency that was working on a category I kind of always loved. I mean, I studied journalism and media studies. I had written for a newspaper in my college days. I had been on radio in my college days. So media was so important to me. But in came marketing through the likes of Unilever, where I really cut my teeth. And then somehow this role presented an opportunity for those paths to collide, where I could be a communication and advertising strategist for a media channel, so DSTV. And there would be some brands they had get to work on, and I thought, obviously this is God, right? I resigned.
DSTV.
I resigned from the other job, and it was only I had to resign from that job. It was only in the resigning from that job that, number one, my former employer came and said, you've got some leave days left behind. Do you want us to pay them out, or do you want to take them? And I said, I want to take them. And then it was a night or so after that where I found out online that there was an underwear and textile fair in Hong Kong exactly in those days. And that's where I found out that I didn't need a visa. I could literally get on the plane. It was like, what do you mean? I just found my dream job. What are you talking about? It was such a no man's land for me. Like, I was so conflicted. I mean, even at my farewell, I didn't even know if I was being honest to my team, because they're busy wishing me well for that job. And all of a sudden, I really don't know. I don't know what I'm going to find in Hong Kong. I had no idea. And coming back, I knew already I'd made a mistake in accepting that job, because there's no way I'm going to let this one go without at least a prototype. That was my thinking at the time. So yeah, that was why it was no turning back. It was just too many right things that just fell in.
So you're a brand strategist, and I'm going to guess one of the first things that you thought about was what was the brand story you were going to tell with this product that you were prototyping. What is Gugu Intimates' brand story?
Geez, I remember in that presentation I told you about, the first thing I knew about this brand was it is a pro-women movement to celebrate women who are comfortable or desire to be comfortable in their own skin. I knew that, and it gave me such goosebumps. In fact, I had that little, who do you think you are to be so, And I was like, nope. It is a pro-women movement for women who are comfortable or want to be comfortable in their own skin. And it meant so much to me because I realized at that moment that that's the journey I just committed to go on for myself. I'm going to have to be comfortable in my own skin to stand and talk about being comfortable in your own skin. And the reason why I painted it so broad a picture was the brand coming into market was to address a gap in a market that wasn't seen, which is your predominantly brown skin tones. But when we take a step back, it is a woman conversation. We are all here wanting to be seen and heard and wanting to feel comfortable as we are. So it is actually, for me, just timing, the universe, God, what you will, that just made the conversation about the brown shades that I launched with at a time when the conversation was so important, that gave it such meaning for me. But for me, Gugu Intimates is, and I use the tagline to kind of explain. When I say the new naked, I mean, to an average person, it sounds just cheeky. It's a cool, fun brand, but it's got a double meaning for me. The new naked was nude is supposed to mean close to your skin tone. It's supposed to mean nude. But here we are with nude not meaning that. So for me, nude is like naked, right? So I said the new naked, the new nude that's going to see more shades. But the new naked was also for me a new kind of confidence that will come from brands like Gugu Intimates seeing you in your own skin. It's a confidence that women should have by knowing that their underwear adorns and complements their skin tone. And then it translates into just women who are wanting to be comfortable as they are in whatever lane they're in. And I expressed that in the brand by just knowing where my center was in creating the brand, and then just collaborating or partnering with brands that would bring that collective consciousness of the new naked is actually knowing that you're beautiful and unique, but there's such a power in the collective. So when you look at our shades lined up, it is such a powerful image. But each one is beautiful, and that's what the new naked, that's what Gugu Intimates means for me.
And that's really interesting that you talk about partnering with brands who embrace or embody that language. I saw online a campaign that was done by a company called Between 10 and 5. And tell me about that campaign, how that came about, and the models that you used for that.
I actually have to give all credit to Steph Jason from Between 10 and 5. She is the editor. It's an online publication which is driving such amazing and mind-opening conversations about, what I call confident in your own skin, however you identify sexually. Yeah. And she called me up literally randomly, and she was like, she's from Between 10 and 5. She's seen the underwear range, and they would like to create, and they've seen how we've launched and shot the campaign, and they want to create an extension of that by recognizing different kinds of women, including those who identify as transgender within the campaign. And I thought, see, that is something that I don't yet have, I won't assume I know enough about to have covered within the launch, but I would love to show that the brand is that open. And I said to her, I will give you the underwear you need. Tell me when. And I just fed through where I see the brand in terms of liking the aesthetic that we'd shot with, but making that stand out on its own. And I wasn't even at the shoot. I remember I was at Essence in Durban at the time, and she and her team just went for it. And I couldn't have done a better job because for me, they brought an extension of the view of beautiful in every shade and comfortable in your own skin than I could have imagined. So that was all Between 10 and 5.
And let's talk about what you have had control over in terms of the visual representation of the brand. You have a definite strategy about the models that you've chosen to use and to represent your brand. So tell me about that.
So it comes a lot far back, right, from, I've told the story with at a Bloom event. Bloom is an event that Farai from TNT Concept Store and Nandi co-own, where I said, I actually never used to believe compliments that I'm beautiful for a very long time. And that was because when you think about it, being the kind of curious kid I was, I bought a lot of magazines with my pocket money, but I never saw myself in those magazines. So for a long time, you can imagine a young girl wondering if only when she looks like that will she be beautiful. And I realized quite far in when I worked on Dove, the brand, when I was at Unilever, how important representation in images was in forming image. So when I was writing down what this brand is and what it stands for, I asked myself, from what I know in my job, how am I going to bring those aspects across? And for me, it was, I want women to look at my brand images and see themselves. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to go walk around. Every day is casting day for me. There are women in waiting who I've cast already. They know, we're shooting the next shoot. You are part of that shoot. I cast as I go because I see women where I'm just like, more women need to see women like themselves in our publication. So we don't use models. We don't hire models. In fact, we have one friend of the brand, Cece. Cece's role is to help the girls who are not models feel comfortable. She's not by any means like a professional. She doesn't do this all the time, but she's very photogenic and she's got some experience. So we fuse her in because she helps, and once the girls see how she does it, you should see how every woman has such an inner model. They're amazing. I've got my personal trainer in there. I've got one of my friends who has who has like a 10-year-old daughter in there. I have one of my, my collaborative business partners from a salon London who is over 40 in there. Like, for me, I want you to page through and be like, yes, I am beautiful as I am in my own skin. So that is the strategy.
So let's go back to the name. How did you come up with the name?
Yeah, so for me, the name was like something that I spent so much time on, and like in hindsight, I can't believe how much agonizing I spent over that name. And I guess it's all, it may seem small now, but it was huge because I just needed to see this name and be able to see it in my head and be able to see it in some kind of lights, got to see the name in lights. So I spent nights and nights up and researching meanings and symbols that would accompany this brand. I literally wanted to put down everything about it. So I remember once going back to my then boss and going, okay, cool, dude, I need you to have a look at these names and tell me what you think. And I was hoping he'd pick one. I was okay with the disappointment of him picking one I didn't like. I didn't expect the look on his face when he was like, they're cool. They don't move me. Like, they don't move me. And I asked him, like, so what do you mean? And I think it was closer to the time that I was going to Hong Kong, like a day or so before. And I kept trying to draw out a little bit more about him. And he recommended I watch a movie called Joy. But then he said to me, why I want you to watch that movie is how integral, I want you to understand how integral you are to the story. How you've built this brand is integral to the story. Now, I'm not saying that's like an O magazine kind of naming convention, but I'm just saying I need you to think about that and find out how you're going to tie yourself in some way or form. So I needed to register the company for some reason. I can't remember what. It needed to be done urgently, so I needed to pick a name. And I gave this guy names, and the names just kept coming back. All those names came back unavailable. They've already been registered by somebody else for some other category close by, clothing-wise. So eventually I'm like to him, listen, I give him my name, and I'm like, just use this. Can I change this? And he goes, yeah, it'll cost you X amount of money, but you can change it. So I'm like, register it. And then something says to me, I need to call my dad and ask him what my name means and why I was named that. So I call my dad, and my dad was like, your aunt actually gave you that name, and it is precious, a treasure, something to be adorned, an object of desire kind of thing. So, well, he didn't use those exact words. So I went to Google and I was like, okay, let's say somebody Googled this to find out what it means. What would they find? And up it comes like Gugu, an object of affection, a treasure, something to be adorned, right? Object of desire. And I was like, that is your skin, man. That is so brown skin. Like, that is, like, take me, I'll give it the name, but without me in it. I just think Gugu is such a name that I can also additionally get to build a story about. Like, it's just, it will define how I present the brand, always in good light, always glowing, always natural, with the stretch marks, with the scars, with the cellulite. Can we just like adorn that object of affection in the underwear? And yeah, that was the name. And I've been very clear about that's the name and its meaning, and let other women then show you what the brand means so that it doesn't become a self-centered brand.
And what about the names of the colors? I know that you gave a lot of thought to the different shades and what you would call them.
So the shades were also, like, I think the first 6 months of the brand were probably like the best job I've ever had. I used to say this all the time, like, this is the job I've been wanting as a strategist. Nobody's telling me no, nobody's telling me anything. So I approached a young lady I respect so much. She's actually recently become self-published. Her name is Lebogang Nova Masango. She's just written a children's book, which I am so proud of her for. And she was a poet I understood, I could relate to. She wrote my life. Like, even in like her pieces, she's a poet, she writes, she does social commentary in a way that I feel like she lives in my head. And when I needed somebody to partner with at a wordsmith level, she was like a first to mind. I didn't think of anyone else. And we dabbled with a lot of what you call angles, right? And I thought, I'm tired of the shade names that make one shade feel revered than the other. And I'm also tired of what kind of is borderline objectification using these foodie type names like we are delicious, cocoa. And it works for makeup, I guess, because it's substrate and whatnot, right? And I'm not going to judge that. But I was like, can we get new names, man? Names that say something. So we try to play with what other things are brown that are more earthy and more wholesome. We got stuck a little bit because I have more shades in my arsenal than we've launched with, right? We were hitting a wall, and I was like, no, it doesn't have legs. Let's try a different angle. And then eventually we were talking about, she asked me what the brand essence is, and I said it's beautiful in every shade. And then we were like, what about beautiful in every language? You're beautiful no matter what shade you are. And I was like, that's what I'm trying to say. I'm trying to say no matter what shade you are. So she started looking at African words that mean beauty, that are easy to pronounce no matter what your accent would be. So we were quite selective about them and their phonetic and pronunciation. And we came up with more than the 5 names, which was what I needed. And we have now a shade name that is Elewa, which is our lightest shade, which is beauty in Yoruba. We've got Amara, which is our second lightest shade, which is beauty in Arabic. And Arabic is quite a dialect specific. So I've learned from a couple of Uber drivers that some, yes, it's Amara. For others, it's something else. And then we've got Buhle, which was to honor kind of where the brands originated from, which is South Africa. Buhle is Zulu, Xhosa, Ndebele, even from Zim. And then you've got Zuri, which is Swahili. Swahili has such an influence on all African languages, and it's such a beautiful way to say beauty. And then the fifth one was, because of where I grew up, Runako, which is Shona, which is just, for me, it rolls off the tongue and it says beautiful. And we've got a 6th shade coming up early 2018, which will be Fefe, which is beautiful in Ghanaian.
So let's talk about, where's the brand going? Where do you see the brand going? What's your vision for the brand?
For me, the vision for the brand is for every woman of color to have at least one set of Gugu Intimates in their repertoire, right? That's the first thing. The second thing means that I would love this brand to become the widest range of skin-colored undergarments available. So if it is an undergarment, shape, cut, or form, and you need it in your skin tone, Gugu Intimates is where you should be going to find it. So we've just gotten started with the t-shirt bra, the strapless bra, the seamless brief, and the seamless undie. There are so many more constructs and forms that we want to bring those shades into. And it's been such a great learning process, knowing what people need. We've already started to work on what the next extension is, which would be to obviously cover the plus size shades with a cut-off bra that is not just beautiful but comfortable, because they've always had to choose. So yeah, that is the immediate future, but the long-term future is the widest range of skin-colored undergarments available.
Now, that's an interesting point that you bring about plus size and the shape being different. Like, what are some of the challenges that you've come across in terms of deciding what you would launch as your initial offering?
So initially, my narrow-minded, not knowing garment construct limitations was that I thought I could just get these 2 cuts and have them in the entire size spectrum, not understanding that as the bust size grows, the garment construct needs to change. So as I was prototyping and bringing in different sizes, I learned very quickly that the current shape and size worked for sizes 32A to about 38D. And then thereafter, what you call double Ds, all the way up to, it goes all the way up to K, I think, or L. That is about 20 or so more sizes. I would have to construct that bra and undie for the needs of that body shape, not just to extend one cut to make it fit all, because that's essentially what I'd be doing. And I thought, if I'm going to be that customer brand and that deliberative brand, let me rather take the time to understand the market and also get the feedback from the gap in the market to fill that gap. And we recently received yet another prototype of a plus size bra that we're looking to get someone to sample and try on for us. And then we can get a couple more, you know. So for me, I let the customer define what the next step for us is. And I think a comfortable and sexy plus size bra has been one of the biggest things that I've gotten feedback about. It's either very comfortable and secure, but it's ugly. And I'm like, but can I not find a way to make it a little bit more, you know? And because it's nude already, it already looks good, by the way. Like, I'm glad to say the nude makes the bra look nice, but it's just about getting it right for the target consumer.
And what's been the response? Well, how have people responded to your line?
So I'd say, like, this is where my marketing strategist person comes in. It's from an awareness perspective, it's been amazing how people have responded. I mean, just yesterday I was trying to show someone on Instagram and we've just hit 11,000 followers. I'm like, what? That is amazing.
And how long? Since when? In how many months?
Look, we previewed and launched the Instagram account in March, but we hadn't yet actually formally launched. But we did get, like, I think we were at about 3,000 followers by the time we officially launched in July. We were at about 2,000 to people who were just curious about what that would be. And we've grown by about 8,000 followers since end of July, since beginning of August. And I mean, being a one-man band, we don't have as much content as I would love the brand to have as yet, but I think 2018 will see a big change in that. And the awareness itself and the just general engagement, how people will comment, not just double tap, they'll comment, has been quite amazing. What I'm learning though is that because it's a new category for us, physical distribution becomes key for women to see, touch, and feel so that they buy. And when they see and touch, they do buy. So the biggest, the reception is great. And it's just about learning and pivoting as a business and adapting to what people are showing you behavior-wise. But it's been great. It's encouraging to keep going.
So you mentioned at the beginning that we're in New York, where you just launched in the North American market. How did that collaboration come about with TNT Concept Store?
So I was already in conversation with Bloom.org, which is co-founded by Farai Simoy, who owns TNT Concept Store, and Nandi. Nandi is based in Joburg. And we had collaborated in July, just before the official launch of Gugu Intimates. It was World Nude Day. And both brands thought there was a synergy.
Let's just pause on that. There is a World Nude Day?
There's a World Nude Day, there's World Naked Day, there's World Bra Day, there's World Breast Day.
Okay, I'll make note of that for next year.
Don't worry, we'll keep you posted. We've got something to say in all of them. So Nandi and I agreed that there was a conversation that we had a synergy on, which was about body positivity. Taking World Nude Day in not just the nudist form of it, but here's the new Naked, a nude underwear brand, and here's a brand for an organization that is about women and women confidence. So she hosted a platform for World Nude Day where I was a speaker with another lady, Sipogazi, she's called the Uncensored Feminist on Instagram. And we were just having a conversation with women about body positivity and being comfortable in your own skin, which Gugu Intimates, for me, fed right into. So I think it was through that conversation and the introductions thereof that when Farai came through for the next Bloom event, where Gugu Intimates had a pop-up stand at the event, she literally was like, so one of the people I need to chat to while I'm here is you. Can we do breakfast? And we do breakfast. She tells me about the store coming up and her the narrative, which is her company that represents brands in New York and in the North America. And I was like, you know what? I didn't even really think about it. It must have taken me about a day to say, sure, I'll do it. I'll figure the rest out. Because I was here last year, October, working on the brand and working on the style, chatting to friends, and just the piqued interest from the few people I spoke to made me curious how the brand would do here. So for me, it was like that answer to that question. It's, well, here you are. You can come and have a look. So yeah, when Farai said, let's look at Gugu Intimates being in the store, initially it was 3 months, and then we agreed on 6 months within the store where we would do some promotional activity as well that they would, coordinate. And so far it's been 2 weeks, and here we are as well in the store. So that is opening up more doors for a couple of other collaborations with other brands that are similar.
And where do you see, right now, how are people getting the brand? You talked about people wanting to touch and feel. So you're obviously here at this store. In South Africa itself, where you've launched the brand, are you in stores? Where do people find you? How do people find you?
So in South Africa, we close off the year with 3 stores, 2 in Johannesburg, which are all in the Miss Salon London chain. So Miss Salon London is a black female-owned franchise of beauty bars. They own their own range of mineral makeup as well. So for me, it was quite a natural synergy to be in their beautiful experiential spaces where women tend to hang out and they shop for jewelry, accessories, and makeup, for the underwear to be within the same setting. And that has worked quite well for us. So we're in their Parkhurst store, that is in Johannesburg. We're in their Morningside store, also in Johannesburg, and then Menlyn Main, which is in Pretoria. So that's been where we've kind of piloted this in-store platform. It was new learning for me as well, inventory management, all sorts of layers. And I think we're ready to expand now and starting to get a lot more other proactive brands coming through saying, would you come into our stores? We'd like to stock your product. So we're looking at expanding that to at least 10 stores by the end of Q1 next year.
So let's talk about, you said, not having the experience, not having come from this industry. What have been your biggest challenges as an entrepreneur going into this industry?
I don't think it's this industry specific. So yeah, for this industry, it has been literally learning on the go. But I've been blessed enough to work for an FMCG company that got you
Explain
to understand.
FMCG.
fast-moving consumer goods. So I worked for Unilever, my first job, and the way that you work as an assistant brand manager is that you are integrated into understanding how your product is actually manufactured right up until you have to sell it, right up until it goes to a retailer, a store. So that kind of exposure, little did I know, prepared me a lot for the process, like the kind of questions I would ask my supplier, about the input costs, about the packaging, about the configurations, about the number of single consumer units or SKUs that I would eventually have. All of those kind of things I learned from, that part of my journey. And then the other things that were a bit of a challenge was garment construction. It's not my base. I had to kind of start to understand that sometimes being a consumer counts for a lot more than I think. The fact that I wear it counts for a lot more than I think, and that I have access to women, and I have a penchant for research. I am not afraid to run desktop and mini qualitative research, so that I filled that gap quite quickly. But the bigger challenge for me has been in evolving and stretching myself and finding the balance between when am I stretching myself and when am I literally driving myself to death. Because I am everything in the business. I literally am sales, front of house. I am often packing orders at night. I'm often dispatching orders to Miss Salon. I'm often doing stock take myself. I do have part-time assistants because of the lean model we run. But the biggest challenge has been for me to literally stay self-motivated and also to self-regulate in a way so that I don't burn out. That one has been a huge one, quite a biggie for me.
What have been your biggest challenges as an entrepreneur, and how did your previous jobs prepare you for some of these challenges?
Geez, there have been quite a lot of challenges. I think it's almost like a recency theory thing. But I think one was getting into the underwear industry where I'm not a corset or garment designer, and I had to learn a lot about the inputs into actually creating this line, and actually outsourcing as well where I can, where I have gaps, and learning when to do that, when to cover the gap in terms of knowledge or when to outsource it. So that was also a challenging one because it was quite proprietary in the beginning. I was quite secretive about the work, and I didn't show it to a lot of people. So it was always tough to decide whether I need to figure something out on my own or reach out. And I've kind of had to learn that one of the best ways to learn it was I actually am the consumer, and that actually counts a lot more than what I think it does. And the other one was kind of an external challenge for me where it's actually knowing how far to extend myself or when I'm literally just flogging the horse and I'm flogging myself to death. And there was always all this conversation, and I always laugh about this, but it's always this tricky conversation online about the grind and the hustle of entrepreneurship. So you're wondering whether if you are consciously finding your flow and being intentional about your day, and you're not hustling and grinding, are you maybe not doing it right?
It's almost like a badge of honor. Like the harder you can grind and the more hours you can grind, then I'm achieving, right?
Yeah, and one of the things that I've kept very close to me was that I committed to this business and said, this for me is a long-term thing. So I can't exhaust myself. I can't burn myself out by trying to do everything at the same time. So I've had to balance that difference between pushing myself and stretching myself to try and go out of my comfort zone, but also trying to keep enough people around me so that I know when I need to take a time out. Like one of the things was the one day here where I literally just passed out the whole day and I could not get out the house. I was just tired, and I realized it's just been a long year, and it's actually okay to cancel one or two things just to take some time out, because it is that balance. Yes, you got to work, but you've got to keep yourself, energized and motivated and centered as well.
Have you had any major failures, and if you have, what have you learned from those failures? And that might not necessarily be even with Gugu Intimates, but just what's been the biggest learning that you've had from failure?
I don't know. I think failure is almost subjective for me because there's a lot of things at the time that were insurmountable, and I was in bed covering my head thinking this is terrible. But in hindsight, some I can't even remember, and some I actually see more the blessing in it than the failure. But I'd say one of the biggest challenges has been the humbling effect of reality versus expectation. I put my skin into this and building this brand and building this business and building this product. And I think I entertained for a very long time the idea that we would land in the market and like completely sell out. And it has been a literal lesson in learning how to build a business, because not even Versace started off and was this coveted. Not even Coca-Cola started off and was in every single household. So it has been that humbling effect of knowing how much I still need to put in to build, to convert. And she's sometimes looking at sales not meeting expectations, because you don't yet have a past, for example, to compare with. So you don't know sometimes whether things are normal or not. You just panic over everything. Rome is burning all the time. So I think one of the failures has just been managing my expectations versus reality and knowing when to panic, knowing when to pivot, knowing when to try a different strategy. Or actually the thing I'm here to learn is knowing when to stop, because I clearly don't know when to stop so far.
What's been the biggest surprise about this journey? This journey so far, because I know you're just beginning.
In part me, I've been a big surprise. There's times when I walk past the mirror and I'm like, who are you? Like, who is this person? There's times when I flash back to very vivid moments sitting at my desk at Joe Public or working late at SAB, South African Breweries. And I'm just like, who is this girl? Like, I posted a photo of myself from 6 years ago the other day, and I'm like, this girl had no idea, right? So biggest surprise has been, one, I remember at some point in my career going for an interview, and I'd changed jobs at one particular role after a year. And I remember the recruiter saying to me, but what if the employer finds you flaky because you've only been in your job for a year? And I remember my answer to them was, I don't believe in staying in a role that doesn't grow me for the sake of saying I stayed in it for a while. So if that counts against me, my reasons for leaving that role are for growth, and that I can see that this role will give me that. And she then said to me, yeah, but it's going to look like you can't stick to one thing. And I remember that it did go under my skin, that comment, because I was like, sheesh. Would I be able to commit to a company like this for long? And I remember saying to someone just this week in an interview that I've been doing this for close to 2 years now, like from inception, whether it's been just day by day research to full on working on the company, which is about 18 months. I was like, I found something that I can commit to. I can see the future in this thing, even when times are hard, you'll go through cash flow, this, funding, that, which are quite debilitating. For me, I don't think about them as the end almost. I think about them as another thing I have to find a new way around. And that's new for me. To see myself navigate and adapt for something that I truly believe in has been something great. The other surprise has just been human beings. And not just because I don't think my product is great and that people genuinely are buying it because they believe in it and they love it, is that the support of people in general. I talk about an advisory team I have where I'll call Ego from Miss Salon and be like, I'm having a panic moment. I need you to talk me off a ledge. And she will call me back in 30 minutes and have worked a way for me to even follow her around her day for me to vent, just humans. I have in the beginning an angel investor who came on board when I'd run out of my own cash to prototype. And I mean, every other day I kept looking and thinking, is this guy crazy? Is this guy giving me this money? Is this guy so human beings have been a pleasant surprise. And the last thing that's really surprised me, it's something that I think you'll enjoy. It's just the power of humans to create their own reality. I couldn't have in my wildest dreams imagined I could create something tangible that can move people. And it's an event that we have here tomorrow at the store where we talk about intentional living. It makes me very emotional, but I used to talk about it, but I created something. And it's real. Yeah.
Who are some of the women who inspire you?
More tear works coming. I think in absentia,
let's
even more
just
than
back up. Where are the tears coming? Let's talk about that. Where are the tears coming from? What is it? Like, what is it that makes you so emotional?
So Gugu Intimates is a story of self-belief for me. I grew up with a lot of people telling me how smart I am and how I'm going to go far, but I could never actually see it for myself. You know, I kind of believed it to a form. It's propelled me, obviously. I've done some great things in my career. I've created brand campaigns that have created memories for people. Yeah. But to do this and actually keep going, I remember once I'd flown to Zim to see my brother. He'd been in a car accident, and I was actually at the hardest point of this journey. It was a lot. I was starting to get scared, one, that I was taking too long to get into market. Somebody would beat me to it, and I'd already spent a year. So all the panic. Am I going to find the money? And he was lying there, just come out of ICU, able to talk and all, and he was just like, they'll launch something like this, but they're not you. So it'll never be like this. I need you to be okay with that. What you have to bring to the world is needed. So I need you to forget about anyone else who could. I mean, you don't see Steve Jobs having lost sleep over Samsung having launched. So I need you to just get outside of being the only one and just be the best at the way you're going to do it. And just to see one of my life's role models affirm me like that, I came back and I kept going. But the people who've impacted my life the most for me at this point in time are no longer around. And that's for me what makes me very emotional. It took me a while to realize that they're here. So for a long time it beat me up that they were not here anymore, like physically. So the tears come from also, can you see this? Like, I think about my mom, I think about my brothers, I think about my grandparents who all used to say there's something so special about you. And I didn't know what it was. And that makes me quite emotional to see this thing and see how people respond and see you get on a plane, get people together to come and talk to me about this journey. That's the surprise. That's what makes me extremely emotional. Like, I need to believe in myself a lot more than, I know I look very confident, but when I look at those moments, I realize I really need to put it together and do it even more for other people to be able to see that in themselves.
You talked about your mom, and I know she was someone who's very instrumental, very inspirational to you. Yeah. What do you think she would say to Gugu, who's sitting across from me today?
Whew. I can imagine the emotions of that happening, but for me, it's just my mom to see, I told you. Like, you're more like me than you ever thought. I used to fight it so much when I was a kid. I remember once picking up the landline at home, all of 13 years old. And I've always had this slightly deeper voice. I sound more grown up than I am on the phone. And this person thought that they were talking to my mom. I was so offended. When she came home, I was like, how dare this person even think? I'm like, I'm not that old. I was so mad. And I remember that's the first memory I have of many other things where people would be like, you sound like your mom, you look like your mom, you're so much like your mom. And I used to fight it and say, I'm my own person. But there's never been a moment I've been prouder that she was right. I was the last of 7 kids for her. And she always used to say to me, I don't mean to make it hard for you, but you're going to be a great businesswoman. And I'd be like, no, honey, I'm going to be the CEO of somebody else's company. I am not doing this, because ever since I was a child, all my mother's been is an entrepreneur. Watching her miss my sports days and seeing her emotional about it, watching her miss important days for us, watching her come home after we're asleep, I somehow formed a block against that. And I was like, I don't want that for myself. But she could tell that I had this hunger to create things that would eventually catch up with me, I guess. And I think she would just give me a big hug and be like, I'm so glad. That's more what I imagine, and I just meditate in that, and I'm okay now. Yeah.
What's the best advice you've been given on this journey?
Jeez,
and actually, what's the best advice you've been given? And what advice would you give somebody who's watching this and who has an idea and is thinking, could I do it?
So the best advice I've received, it's very hard to say which is the absolute best. I have advice in categories. I've been very spoiled with people who have traveled this journey ahead of me or who have a different viewpoint that I could really benefit from. And I'm very proud to always say this in interviews. There are people who will give you technical advice. I prefer to give the advice that really gets you to get started. And the biggest demon most entrepreneurs, especially Black entrepreneurs, will have to fight is a personal confidence issue. You got to believe that you and that idea are what the world needs. And in fact, make it as gloomy as imagine if you deprive the world of that idea. Because for me, there's too many ideas in the gravesites. There's too many ideas in the wrong career refusing to see it. So you got to believe in the strength of your idea and that you are worthy to have been given that idea to bring out. That is for any new thing. And I'm starting anew every day. I mean, just the other day, I decided on a new venture through Gugu Intimates I want to try. And I still have to go back and go, you are the right person to do this. You are going to revolutionize the way people do pop-up stores. Okay, so it's that. And that's the best advice I'd like to share with anyone. You got to believe in yourself. Surround yourself with the tools, the people, the reading. Clean up your media consumption if you have to, but protect what's happening here quite a bit, because that is all you'll have until the thing is tangible. And then other people will give you feedback, but don't rely on other people in the beginning. You've got to dig deep.
So how do you go about sustaining that belief in yourself and belief in your ideas? And do you have a routine that you follow?
I pride myself around one central practice that then gets built on by other things. I meditate at least 20 minutes a day, especially on my waking moments, because I find my anxiety comes to party when I wake up. So the first 20 minutes of my waking up are me putting my phone on airplane mode and setting up my clock to meditate. And thereafter, I think it just calms down my frequency so that I can be more clear and intentional about my day. The second thing that I am is I'm all about intention. I realize that we become slaves to our days and therefore our weeks and our months and our lives. So I try to decide every morning what success looks like for that day. Because if you don't go out with an intention in mind, you're going to take whatever. You're going to react to whatever the day has. So, and I try to live life less in reactionary mode. So intention. The other thing is I decided about 18 months ago to tidy out my media consumption. I don't listen to the news voluntarily. I don't subscribe to newspapers anymore. I will look out for the news that impacts my daily life and my business because I know where to find it, but I don't live my life in reaction to just information being bombarded at me. I choose my TV shows. I listen to more podcasts and ebooks and audiobooks than anything else. So yeah, it's just protecting the space. These four walls or how many ever walls around my head, I try to feed that. I try to feed that as intentionally as possible every day.
What brings you the greatest joy?
What brings me the greatest joy is seeing love and happiness come from other people. Like just seeing, like being in that space where you can literally, the joy and the happiness from others vibrates, and to have had something to do with that brings me such joy. From just cracking jokes or from just, talking to people or creating something that I can see people congregate around that makes them feel a type of way. That brings me joy.
And what are you most grateful for?
I'm most grateful for second chances. I know I've wasted chances enough times in my own life to even at some point have believed I don't deserve this one. I'm most grateful that the universe, life, and time are all very forgiving.
And what's your biggest dream?
Oh, my biggest dream, my inner 5-year-old is standing on a stage and sharing with tangible proof how we can create the lives of our dreams. And I have tangible proof, and it's this global brand, this worldwide phenomenon called Gugu Intimates that has revolutionized the way women see themselves and is referenced as a turning point, one of the turning points for brands and how they relate to women.
It has been such a joy to spend this time with you. I'm so grateful. Thank you so much for making the time. I know you have a super busy schedule while you're here. Where can people find you, and where can they find information about Gugu Intimates?
So you can find Gugu Intimates first and foremost on our online store, www.guguintimates.com, where we ship worldwide, and you can select your shade there, and we will ship it post office to post office within less than 7 days. And then you could always come through to the TNT Concept Store, which is on 385 Tompkins Avenue, where we've got the whole spread, and you can literally get your amazing first bundle together. And you can also follow us all on Instagram. Gugu Intimates is on Instagram. TNT Concept Store is also on Instagram. You can find The Narrative, which is the brand that represents all these brands that come into the store. So there's many avenues for you to get a hold of me. And I'm on Instagram as well as Gugu_N. So you can follow us on all those channels.
Okay, and I'm going to ask you a final question. So as you know, this whole platform that we're creating is called Ndini, which means I am. And my belief is that whatever you say following I am defines your destiny. So finish the sentence for me. I am.
I am Gugu, an object of desire, something to be treasured, something to be adorned, beautiful and unique.
Thank you so much. It's been, I'm going to give you a hug.
Thank you.
It's been such a joy.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you.
has been the most emotional interview I've ever had.
So glad we could make it work. I'm glad that the universe brought us together.
Yo, this is amazing.